Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Harvey, Levin here.
Jason?
Derek here.
So we broke the story over the weekend that Aaron Carter died. It's really sad. It's so tragic. To me, this really kind of underscores, again, this epidemic in this country of mental health and substance abuse, the two of which are often related. And it seems, based on what everybody's saying, including Aaron's brother Nick, that was the case with Aaron. We know substance abuse was an issue, and also he was clearly having mental struggles. But, 34 years old, died in his bathtub at home. It's just so sad.
It's really sad. I mean, we've covered him a lot over the years. He's gone through a lot of trials and tribulations throughout his short life, but this really brought it home. I mean, he's 34 years old, and mental health issues and drug issues, they're indiscriminate. I mean, they can take you at any time. You think he's still a kid, he'll go through this phase. It's just relentless, and to die in your bathtub and be found by a woman who's yelling, and we've heard the sort of the scanner call on that. It's heartbreaking, regardless of what troubles he had during his life.
Yeah, no evidence of foul play. It seems like it was obviously, Aaron came out and talked about the fact that, Nick came out and talked about the fact that he's always recognized, he's had a complicated relationship with his brother, always recognized that seems to recognize this was always a possibility. He said, I've always held on to the hope that he would somehow, someday want to walk a healthy path and eventually find the help that he so desperately needed. Real acknowledgement that Aaron was beyond the reach of his family and those closest to him as he just spiraled downhill.
They had a tough relationship. He had a restraining order. Nick and Angel had to get a restraining order against Aaron during his life just for some of the antics. So it's troubling.
It raises kind of a much bigger issue about how do you deal with mental health issues now? I mean, as bad as they were, things got so exacerbated by COVID and by the climate now that it's such a crisis in this country. I'm not sure what is a bigger crisis than mental health at this point, but it just feels like, we have just so scratched the surface, in terms of visibility of how big this problem is. And, you look at the way people act out, sometimes violently, and sometimes they, inflict harm upon themselves.
Yep.
But solving something like this, where you have limited resources, where the problem just keeps growing and growing. And again, I don't think we understand the depth of this. And, especially with young kids, these young kids are going to grow up and they're going to have enough freedom to act out. I really fear what's going to happen in this country with that.
Let me put a more optimistic spin on. I was going to say I have a more optimistic take, but let me put a more optimistic spin. People have been suffering with mental health issues forever, obviously. And we are finally at a point where I think you can talk about it openly. And you're seeing celebrities come out and talk about it openly. Now, you're still going to have awful things happen. People struggle with mental health, get involved in drugs, all sorts of bad things happen. But at least now we talk about it. We don't ostracize the mentally ill.
Naomi Osaka taking leaves. The Shawn Mendes taking a leave.
There's
concerts.
so many examples in the NBA and sports of athletes at the top of their profession. Kevin Love was one of them.
Simone
who
Biles.
Step aside because of these things, and we can talk about it. So I hear you, Harvey. It's devastating, and the problem is awful. It's a true epidemic.
I want to counter that.
Yeah,
I think you're right that celebrities can come out and talk about this and they get embraced, which they should. But when you get into, ordinary America and you're dealing with families that aren't equipped to deal with something like this, aren't sophisticated to deal with this, and are scared, and when they watch things happening to a loved one, don't know how to deal with it, I'm not sure that, look, I mean, it's great that celebrities are comfortable doing this, and others maybe are too in growing numbers, but I think the problem is so big. I mean, look, everybody suffers from a level of mental struggle. Everybody.
Yes.
Everybody. And it's almost like it's on a spectrum. And it just feels like that spectrum, everything is slid to a point where it's gotten more intense.
And Jason, to your point, I like the optimism. I do think there's more openness talking about certain types of depression and things of that nature, people taking leaves from their professions. There's not a ton of sympathy for the, Aaron Carters of this world when it expresses itself through drug addiction and really sort of behavior like Kanye West, where it's really outlandish type behavior. There doesn't seem to be this well of empathy. And I'm not saying there should be, because that kind of behavior is destructive to you and the people around you, but it's what makes the problem so vexing. I mean, Nick Carter loved his brother, but had to get a restraining order against him. And you would think, why couldn't he just support his brother? Well, you don't want to enable the behavior.
Well, and how do you support it?
And sometimes it's violent, and sometimes it's really sort of harmful to you and your family. So handling it is, I don't think, just a matter of resources. We don't even have our arms around how to address these problems. And
well, some of them are unaddressable, and they're going to be awful, tragic cases like this one. And there's no perfect solution. There's no panacea here.
I'm not sure there is a solution, to be
No,
honest.
there's not. Of course there's not. It's like a million other intractable problems that we deal with, and we do the best we can.
Speaking, you mentioned Kanye.
Yeah.
And we were talking mental struggles. So Kim was at a soccer game with one of their kids. Kanye was there, and they were conversing. And I think there is less here than meets the eye.
Oh.
Everybody's, oh my God, they're talking. They must be getting along. Everything's great. She's just trying to walk that tightrope right now.
It seemed like it. I totally agree. She's terrified of not talking to him. She's terrified to talk to him because you never know what is going to set him off and cause him to go completely, either go on social media and badmouth her or torpedo a relationship with the kids or whatever it is. I think that she's tiptoeing.
I agree with you both. How do you co-parent tiptoeing around landmines when someone is this, their ego is somewhat fragile, they're combustible.
Somewhat fragile.
Quite fragile. How do they...
Fabergé egg?
Yeah,
fragile?
I mean, he's just eggshell. I mean, he shatters. So how do you do this? I mean, in the short term, she's trying to keep the peace and go to these sports games and maybe keep the conversation very surface level and not trigger him. But over the long term, they've got 4 kids together. They're going to have to be able to address difficult issues with those kids as they become teenagers, as real life issues, as what school they go to. You can't do this all the time. You can't.
What's so interesting is you say they have to address these issues. He may not see it that way. And, maybe they both think the issues have to be addressed, but they're in different universes. So how does she navigate this? I mean, I was thinking about this over the weekend, especially when these pictures came out. How does she navigate this over time when he is living in a different universe from her and they have 4 kids to raise? How does she navigate this?
There's no answer to that, right? I mean, there are situations where, she's going to have to tiptoe around him. There's also potential court intervention given his recent activities.
Yep.
But if she goes down that road,
it inflames him sometimes.
If she goes down the road of trying to deprive him of time with the kids, he is going, from everything we've seen, he is going to get really aggressive and angry, and she doesn't want that. And so I think she's in a terrible, terrible position with regards to the kids and her relationship with their father.
If she tries to speak with him through third-party intermediaries, he's not going to like that. He's not going to like court intervention. I think the only hope is that he goes through these phases.
He's not going to like. Well, hold on. He's not going to like anything other than what he wants.
That's right.
And so if that's the baseline, which it is. And look, and I know you say this about court, but at a point, he gave the name of the school that these kids go to, which enraged her.
Right.
And rightly so.
Yes.
Well, he's not going to do stuff like that again. I mean, look at what he did when he ran for president and the things he said about her and the kid and the whole thing. So
courts are there to look out for the best interests of the kids.
I think this is destined to end up in court. I think it's destined, whether it's in December next month when they have to go and come up with a custody arrangement. Supposedly they're trying to settle it, whether they do or don't. To think there's not going to be a crisis in the future, even if they settle it, is daydreaming.
Just as an aside, what's the status of his representation? Does he have counsel?
He has a lawyer. He has a lawyer in Beverly Hills. There were incorrect reports saying that that all the divorce lawyers quit. The New York one did.
Okay.
But he's maintained, at least as I knew of on Friday,
right.
He's maintained this lawyer in Beverly Hills. So they're negotiating, But he's been disengaged from this. He just didn't want to do.
Lawyers got to have difficult conversations with clients.
Oh my
Well,
God!
And
well,
how is that going to go?
here's
It's
the
not
other thing.
like he respects a whole.
What does the
bunch of
conversation with Kim look like at this point? And
think she's
how do
getting to
you
that point.
how do you negotiate? Right, you can't if she does have that fear, you can't even give him the 1%.
Well,
right?
what you can do is you could do supervised visitation.
if he's
Yes.
willing to do that, which I can't people he would be, right? I mean, who's going to supervise?
Can you imagine
Kanye?
a supervisor
right.
having exactly
Sitting in a room watching
the-
him get on the floor and do tea parties with the kids? You know, it's hard to fathom. Really, it is hard to even picture the scenario where there's somebody sitting in the room going, "Hey, Kanye."
You've just got to wonder what she thinks about when she's alone with this whole thing, because this is, I'll tell you, you can solve problems short term. This is a long-term problem where there doesn't seem to be much of a solution long-term. This is not, I got to solve this for the next year. It's for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
Yeah. And mental illness is progressive. I mean, these
Right.
episodes
I mean,
will
mental
get
illness
longer.
doesn't
It is
get
a
better.
progressive
It doesn't get
disease.
better.
I have
Yes.
one more thought about this. Everything in her life for the last 20, 25 years has been curated for television or for social media or for an audience. And we've talked about how they conflated, their whole family has, their real life and their television life, and where does one end and where does the other begin. This is different, right? This is something that can't be for content. It can only be for protecting these kids. And I think that puts her in a very, very odd place that I don't know that she knows how to perfectly handle.
I think she'll make the right decision about that. She
Oh, I
always
do- I
seems
do
to
too.
like
Yeah.
sort of put them first, and I don't
Yeah.
know what that'll mean.
Well,
but-
when you say right decision, you mean there's a solution.
True. I don't know the exact solution,
the
but I think
best
she'll make
decision.
what
I
she
don't know that
believes
they're-
to be in their interest rather than what she believes to be in the keeping up with the Kardashians.
Yes,
So
which is
we-
a departure from everything
We've
else.
talked about two subjects, neither of which have solutions. Well, let's move on.
Let's talk about the election.
Let's go 3 for 3.
Let's go 3 for 3. So, Bill Maher, I got to tell you, I was actually texting with him on this last week. I just don't think a lot of people in this country are into democracy. I just don't think so. And the reason I say that is everybody will say, oh, yes, I want to support democracy. I want to protect democracy. Well, when you drill down on what that means, not so much. To me,
Their actions are speaking louder than their words.
there is a foundation for democracy, to me. And this is just my opinion about this. But the foundation to me is tolerance. That if you have tolerance, then you can build on democracy. You can build on free speech, tolerating speech that you disagree with. You can build on the notion of, I don't hate people whose political views are not aligned with me. You can build on believing in free and fair elections when, even if your side loses.
Tolerating results you don't like.
Toleration.
Yeah.
And I just think there's such intolerance in this country that when you really drill down to the elements of democracy, I don't think a lot of people agree with it. So Bill Maher on Friday night talked about the fragility of democracy, and also the fact that we're going to get a lot of people are going to get elected tomorrow who just don't really care about the election
Has
results.
spoken about,
well, they're
spoken
open-
out openly
big lie.
hostile to
Yeah.
it. Right.
They're
right.
open.
And
If
it's
my
bra-
guy loses, it's because of a wrinkle.
Right,
and
and it's-
embrace the lie of.
So now it's
Trump.
about, if I win, I win, and if I lose, fuck it, I win.
Right.
And that's what they're going to say. So it's not really about counting votes. They know. Now it's not even about were the votes counted properly. It's just, fuck it. I'm just going to win and say I won, and I'll get a Secretary of State to say it. So here's what Bill said about the fragility of democracy.
Democracy is on the ballot, and unfortunately, it's going to lose. And once it's gone, it's gone. So here's what's going to happen. Republicans will take control of Congress, and next year they'll begin impeaching Biden and never stop. They'll impeach him for getting out of Afghanistan and getting into Ukraine. For inflation, for recession, for falling off his bike, it won't matter and it won't make sense. But Biden will be a crippled duck when he goes up against the 2024 Trump Kari Lake ticket. And even if Trump loses, it doesn't matter. On Inauguration Day 2025, he's going to show up, whether he's on the list or not. I'm afraid democracy is like the McRib. It's here now. It'll be around for a little bit longer, so enjoy it while you can.
And the way he put it, the only thing I kind of disagree with him on is that if Trump loses, legitimately loses the election, he's going to have enough secretaries of state in key states to say, yeah, I mean, we're just going to say Trump won. Yeah. And then what do? I mean, they came real close to this happening 2 years ago. Now they're getting people in positions where they can make it happen.
The woman who's likely to win the Secretary of State job in Arizona has openly stated that the election results, if they're against Trump, will not be enforced.
Right.
Or against the Republican,
right.
will not be enforced.
Right.
And if they are in favor of the Republican, they will be enforced.
And here's the thing. Bill Maher now has a whole new well of credibility about all this stuff because very early on he said Trump won't leave willingly after his first administration.
Bill,
Everyone said, you're being alarmist. Bill is the only one saying this.
He was saying that.
And then he didn't really leave willingly. He did leave. And Bill said he would maybe sort of hunker down with the military. He didn't do that, but he didn't leave willingly. Well, he left after a mess.
He encouraged a full-scale riot.
He wanted to hang his own VP. I mean, this is a mess. So when he speaks about they're going to this game plan, they're going to try to impeach Biden. It's going to be a mess. He's going to show up on Inauguration Day.
Yeah.
But you know what? You can't take it lightly anymore.
Bill Maher said this 2 years before. He was beating this drum 2 years before the 2020 election. Not only nobody believed him, people were scoffing at him. And, and even now when he says stuff like this, people are saying, oh, you're a turncoat to the... Bill Maher is a liberal Democrat. And it's like, Jesus. I mean,
in the old sense of what it is to be a liberal Democrat. But that's key. Because he's sick of what the Democrats have become.
He criticizes Democrats all the time.
He criticizes them a lot.
But he criticizes them not to shit on them. He's criticizing them because he thinks they're blowing it in terms of how they are presenting themselves to the public. So he's trying to help them. And look, you may disagree with him, and that's fine. But to say, oh, you're a turncoat because believe me, if you at
the top of the editorial it says there's one party that cares about democracy and you should go vote. However, I think it's a lost
right.
cause.
I mean, he thinks the Republicans are the Republic, especially the election deniers. He thinks
fascists. Yeah.
But he blames the Democrats for turning the country onto Republicans.
Well, right,
and that's what he's doing.
And he's got points.
Absolutely.
Yet there are so many people, Democrats who are like, oh my God, you're a turncoat, you're fat, you're.
I can't countenance the AOC wing of the Democratic Party, I don't know how to deal with.
Somebody should be listening.
Fewer and fewer people.
And finally, Twitter. Yep. So Elon has now backed off.
This is my favorite story of the month, by the way.
What? So Elon's backed off the $8 a month for.
He first rolled it out.
Right. Okay. So now he's backed off until the election. So it's probably going to happen Wednesday. What's your take on this? I got to take.
Well, he's also there's reports this morning he's seeking to rehire many of the people he
because he fired too many.
He still needs to run a company,
so he can't run the company. It's full hubris.
Okay.
My take on this thing is that he has. We know. He overspent by tens of billions of dollars for a company that wasn't worth nearly what he said it was going to be worth.
Yeah.
He went out through all of his bravado and made this huge offer and tried to back out of it and couldn't. He now owns a company that his pride is on the line, obviously tens of billions of dollars on the line, and he wants to make it work, I think. But he's realizing that given the backlash he got about the $8 for the verification check mark, that's maybe not this great viable path forward. I just think here's a man believing so fully in his own intelligence that he overlooks contrary points and just plows forward and gets.
He underestimated what content moderation would be necessary. A lot of people have fled already. I do think you're going to see this $8 roll out because, to your point, he's got to come up with $1.2 billion to service the interest on the debt he took to acquire the company. Just the interest.
Right.
Twitter only makes less than $1 billion a year, so he needed money. He's going to get it through this fee, and I think what is going to happen, so? I do. I think Twitter will become smaller, but just as loud. And for the angry people who really love being on Twitter, you're going to pay $8 a month, but it will not be sort of the town hall that he envisions. I think it'll be a small walled garden of angry people.
But it's a small walled garden. How do you get enough people to pay $8? I don't see it.
You are acting like Twitter used to be PBS. Twitter was a sewer before Elon Musk bought it. It was a sewer of hate on both sides.
Although they tried to address it and kick off people.
I know they did.
He's not even
No.
It was a sewer, but
and I know that. And and
he at least skimmed some of the poop
and
off.
he has made it worse in the sense. I mean, the thing that really just struck me in such a horrible way was a week ago when he tweeted out that ridiculous link about Paul Pelosi.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I thought, oh God, he's making a bad situation worse, and that was awful. But it's like at a point, it's become so people don't like Elon Musk, and I think if this were a different person, if this were a Bill Gates, they'd be looking at it differently.
Right.
And look,
Yes.
I mean, it's just the tribalism in this country. And I thought what Elon Musk did with this link was awful. At the same time, I just want to talk about consistency here. NBC did a report on Friday that essentially embraced the spirit of that ridiculous conspiracy link about Paul Pelosi. And, they said, oh, well, he answered the door, which is completely contrary to what all the evidence shows, and that, he walked back to this guy. So
After talking to the cops.
and then they retracted that.
yeah,
right?
but again, the point when they did that story,
yeah,
the point of that clearly was to say, oh, well, maybe
we're not quite sure. If
right,
Buffalo's telling the truth.
and
right?
and there was no evidence, and so they say it didn't meet our standard of reporting.
Yeah.
Well, you reported it,
Yeah.
and so what does that mean? Because they must have thought about the implication of that story. Right. So then all of a sudden it's like, well, it didn't meet our standard. Well, you put it out there the way Elon put the other thing out there.
Right.
And what have you heard about that?
Nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. And so my point is that I think that in many ways people go after the person and not the principle. And that's a problem. It's just an ongoing thing
Right.
that people go after the person and not the principle. And and listen, go after Elon Musk as we should for what he did putting that tweet out.
Or maybe it's just that nobody watches NBC News. So it just went out there. It's like shouting into the woods.
Well, no, I mean
Well, let me ask you though. He's saddled with his reputation, which he's earned, by the way, by being a Twitter troll for many, many years. Now he's the CEO of Twitter, this company that he wants to.
It's a private.
It's
company.
a totally private
head
company.
twit, right?
But can he have it succeed where the CEO is an active user and sort of spouting off in these ways? Can the company succeed that way? He's saddled with that, but can he shed it and run a successful company? That's my question.
What I'm wondering, and I don't know, because I have no idea. Is it possible Twitter's just going to go the way of MySpace and that TikTok's going to take over?
But here's the thing. Maybe, but TikTok does not allow celebrities the same sort of direct access to the people that like them. TikTok's a very different platform.
Who cares about celebrities? Who cares about celebrities?
What are you talking about?
I mean, you said it doesn't allow celebrities the access.
People love this. People follow Twitter in droves to watch what celebrities have to say.
But they have other platforms they could go on. It's not about.
But that's what
Twitter's in the firmament, man. Twitter's not going anywhere.
I tend
you
to
think?
agree.
Absolutely.
People said that
MySpace,
about MySpace.
They did, and Friendster, and we've heard it all, but this one is really concrete in people's mind. People talk about, I'm going to tweet. No one ever said, I'm going to MySpace, I'm going to Friendster, I'm going to tweet. No, I'm serious.
But
it is locked into the way we communicate.
But what happens if it becomes so dysfunctional?
Yeah, he could run it into the ground.
He could. There'll be, and it could be replaced. Nothing's forever, right? I mean,
it's true. Nothing's forever. And Elon Musk could run this into the ground.
Possible.
And I don't know. Listen, this is.
We could all be on Parler next year, just like.
Well, no, I mean,
Have you parlored that yet?
And maybe maybe ultimately.
I'm going to parlor that. When that happens, then
maybe
we'll
ultimately he just shuts it down.
No, or maybe ultimately it's going to the ship's going to right itself at some point. I mean, if he realizes that it's going to collapse if he doesn't, maybe he'll right the ship with guardrails up. I don't know. Even with guardrails, it's a sewer.
Let me ask you a question, Derek.
It all
do you think 3 years from now, Twitter has more users and is more in the zeitgeist than it is now, or it's a smaller, more sort of
How long? 3 years from now?
Yeah.
I think it starts smaller, and I think it grows. I never count Elon out, and I'm surprised you do. You're a big believer in this guy as this grand visionary. Certainly, this is a rocky start.
This is full of hubris, though. I mean,
it's a lot of
one
hubris,
thing
of course.
to
He bought
create
a
the
toy.
greatest technology of the last 40 years. It's another thing to just take a platform that exists and try from through force of will and popularity to make it bigger.
Yeah, I don't count him out. He thought it was being mismanaged, and he bought the whole thing. So we'll see.
And look, they said that about rockets.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
and he lands them now.
And he lands these rockets, and NASA couldn't. So look, all I'm saying is To treat Elon Musk like a moron
No, not at
is a huge
It's moronic.
miscalculation.
Don't underestimate.
It's a huge miscalculation. He's not. He is a genius. Now, the question is, how's he going to apply that?
Right.
I just don't think we know yet.
Nope. We'll see.
See you tomorrow. Oh, Election Day.
Election day tomorrow. Go vote.